If you wanna run away with me, I know a galaxy and I could take you for a ride. I had a premonition that we
Delegates and sponsors, faculty and friends, thank you for joining us virtually this evening. My name is Nydia Lab, and I am the president of the International Relations Club at William & Mary. On behalf of the club and the college, I'd like to welcome all of our guests to WMHSMUN this weekend. Since 1931, the International Relations Club has sought to promote the study and pursuit of international relations at the college and beyond. Our Model United Nations conferences, competitive travel teams, campus events, and philanthropy encourage engagement with a variety of international relations topics. The three Model United Nations conferences we host annually, WMHSMUN, our middle school conference, WMIDMUN, and our collegiate conference, ANMUN, are highlights of our year and the culmination of our mission. WMHSMUN is our oldest and largest conference, and this year marks its 35th iteration. The International Relations Club looks forward to WMHSMUN every fall. Club members are able to apply their classroom and research experiences at William & Mary in a unique and creative simulation environment. And more importantly, they get to share these passions with the next generation of diplomats, policymakers, and world leaders. As you can probably imagine, making this weekend come together is a feat, and a remarkable one undertaken by the WMHSMUN Secretariat every year. However, this year stands apart. We are still living through the COVID-19 pandemic, a circumstance that continues to bring uncertainty and new challenges every day. In this regard, I am uniquely proud of the team and its unwavering leadership. So now, it is my honor to introduce the brilliant and unstoppable Secretary General of WMHSMUN 35, Megan O'Connor. Megan is a senior at the college studying history with a minor in mathematics. She's a research assistant for aid data at the Global Research Institute and a peer reviewer for the James Blair Historical Review. Within IR Club, Megan has served as Chargé d'Affaires for WMHSMUN 32, Director of Conference Development for WMHSMUN 33, and Director of External Relations for ANMUN 9, William & Mary's Collegiate Model United Nations Conference. Megan is a leader distinguished by her strength of character, her commitment to her team, and her unrelenting focus on the road ahead. No other individual on this campus has done more to support, improve, and grow the conference than Megan. I could talk about Megan's predecessors, the legendary people who have taken the Secretary General position before her. But the truth is, after watching her work tirelessly over the past year, Megan's legacy is hers alone. She has set a new standard for what it means to be WMHSMUN's Secretary General, and more so, she has surpassed every expectation of her position. It was a privilege and a true pleasure to work with her in club leadership over the past year. Megan's Secretariat, the member of this club's executive board, and the club as a whole all admire her, and I am confident by the end of this weekend, you will understand exactly why Megan deserves the utmost respect from her peers. She is a phenomenal friend, a steadfast leader, and a guiding light in this entire endeavor. Please join me in welcoming and thanking the Secretary General of WMHSMUN 35, Megan O'Connor.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the 35th William & Mary High School Model United Nations Conference. I'm Megan O'Connor, the Secretary General of WMHSMUN 35. My Secretariat, myself, and everyone at WMHSMUN cannot be more excited to have you be a part of our conference this year. 35 years ago, WMHSMUN began its run as the flagship Model United Nations Conference located at William & Mary. Since then, we've welcomed delegates from across the country and around the world for year after year of collaboration and problem solving. Though, as many of you know, this format was not our first choice for holding the 35th WMHSMUN, we cannot be prouder of the conference we have planned and are ecstatic that it is coming to fruition. There's no doubt that the world has changed in many ways in the last 35 years. Since the late 80s, the world has changed politically, socially, geographically, and I'm sure that we're all tired of talking about just how much it's changed in the last year and a half. Though our everyday routine has evolved, society is dealing with many of the same issues it faced when WMHSMUN started, from managing nuclear technology to working to eliminate discrimination and inequality. Further, the world is still grappling with conflicts today that have existed for well beyond the 35 years of WMHSMUN and will likely continue to pose challenges in the future. Thus, if there's one thing I want you to take away from this conference weekend, it is this: progress takes different forms. When you are in committee, grappling with those real-world conflicts, or exploring the possibilities of an alternate history, or shaping the actions of a company or institution, remember, every step counts, no matter how small it is or how insignificant it might seem. Every time you speak to your fellow delegates in a moderated caucus, every contribution you make in an unmod, every idea you brainstorm or develop, you are working towards a goal or solution alongside others who are focused on and care about the same issues as you. With that, I am delighted to introduce our keynote speaker, someone who has significant experience working on issues that have impacted society for generations. Dr. Ian Ralby is founder and CEO of IR Consilium, a family firm that provides leading advice and assistance on maritime and resource security. He is a globally recognized expert in 5 main areas. 1, maritime law and security, especially identifying and addressing evolving threats. 2, maritime strategy that integrates security, governance, and the maritime economy. 3, recognizing and countering resource-related crimes. 4, regulating, governing, and overseeing private security companies. And 5, certain aspects of international law, including the legal regimes around floating armories, protection of submarine cables, and the use of force by armed contractors. He is a senior fellow at the Global Energy Center of the Atlantic Council, a maritime crime expert for the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes Global Maritime Crime Program, and an adjunct at various institutions, including the U.S. Naval War College and the Defense Institute of International Legal Studies. Having worked in more than 80 different countries, Dr. Ralby maintains close relationships with leading professionals around the world in a variety of different disciplines. He continues to serve as an expert advisor to and consultant for various government agencies, international organizations, and private sector entities. He earned a BA in Modern Languages and Linguistics and an MA in Intercultural Communication from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, a JD at William & Mary, and both an MPhil in International Relations and a PhD in Politics and International Studies at the University of Cambridge.
Hi, my name is Dr. Ian Ralby, and I am absolutely delighted to be here with you. I wish I could be with you all in person, but the world is a funny place. I am so pleased to be able to share with you some thoughts about my own work and career, and I hope that this will be a helpful kickoff for what should be an amazing few days for you. My work is very strange. It is a very unique and niche field that I work in, focusing on maritime security, maritime law, and resource related issues. But I generally describe what I do as being that I fight pirates, traffickers, smugglers, and thieves. It's quite glib, it sounds a bit ridiculous, but it's actually quite true. About 90% of what I do covers the maritime crimes that plague our global oceans. And that is actually a huge amount of work and world affairs. We are often overly unaware of how much the maritime space affects our life on land. And so I have had the opportunity to work in more than 80 countries around the world and work with far more than 100 countries in total. And in that work, I've been able to negotiate treaties, develop security cooperation agreements, resolve different issues like specific piracy cases, or develop national or regional strategies for handling maritime security threats. And across all that time, I've had the chance to reflect on what kind of skills and values are needed to be effective in international affairs. And so I was so pleased to have the opportunity today to share some of that with you as you embark on what I hope will be an inspiring and instructive experience for you. And I'll come back to that towards the end. But what I want to do is give you 3 pieces of advice and then explain what I mean by them. So number 1, be civil. Number 2, be honest. And number 3, be courageous. Civility is a concept that sometimes gets overplayed. It sometimes gets translated to mean be polite, be nice, be kind. All of those things are very good. It is important to be polite, to be nice, to be kind. But that is not what civility is about. Civility, fundamentally, is about recognizing the humanity in each other and respecting the human dignity that we all share. That is what civility means. That is not to say that everyone is nice and try to make everyone a good person. Not everyone is good. We have some really, really cruel and evil people around the world. That is unfortunately a fact of life. However, we can find often the opportunity to appeal to humanity even in people that we do not like, that we do not agree with, that we in fact even find distasteful for some reason. And when we are dealing with international affairs and international relations, what that fundamentally means is that we are dealing with the interaction between people representing entities and governments. The United Nations is an organization built on countries. The members of the United Nations are countries, but countries are made up of people. And so fundamentally, the United Nations is a collection of people. And we have to keep that in mind as we interact with each other, as we go to try to negotiate between countries, that we are truly negotiating between individuals. To that point, I found myself in a very awkward situation a few years back. I was asked on behalf of the United States government to advise and assist on the negotiation of a 4-country treaty for security cooperation. One of the countries in that group, unfortunately, had a human rights record that made it very difficult for the United States to fund or interact with anything involving that country. That country also speaks a different language than all its neighbors, and when we were going to set up the negotiation, we had to decide what interpreters to have present. And when we asked everybody who was going to be there what languages they were comfortable using, we were able to find some common ground. But when we got there, and we were there in person, as individuals sitting around a table, the people from this country that has the troubling human rights history actually said that they wanted to give their opening remarks in their native language. I unfortunately found myself in the awkward position of both chairing the negotiation and being the only person who was able to do the interpretation for them. So as they began their talk, I had to translate into English everything that they were saying, which was a long rant about their distaste for the United States of America. So I found myself, as the lead US delegate, explaining to everyone else how they found us to be problematic and denigrating their integrity. That was a really difficult position to be in. But it also was an opportunity because I was able to tell everyone what I was going to say and then say it to them in their own native language and respond by saying, look, our countries have a disagreement. Our countries do not see eye to eye. Our countries do not trust each other. But none of those things get in the way of us being able to interact here as human beings who respect each other. And what we are trying to do here together is negotiate something that will benefit everyone sitting at this table. So if we can look beyond what our countries are doing as entities and recognize what we can do as people, we can make something good happen. And we were able to do that. Now, it was difficult, and there were some awkward conversations over lunch and dinner as we got deeper into it. But ultimately, we ended up becoming friends to the point that a few weeks ago, just recently, I woke to a text message from somebody I didn't know. And they said that the family of one of the delegates who had been in that negotiation wanted me to know that unfortunately one of those delegates had just passed away. And it was a very sad message to wake up to, but it was a reflection on just how much the appeal to being humans together really made a difference, because people I didn't even know knew who I was and found it worth their time to communicate to me across the world that somebody had passed away. And I was very sad, and I was able to reach out to his family and send condolences, and that made a difference. And now our countries are much closer together. Things have improved. But that ability to be civil and find that mutual dignity, that human integrity in each other, was critical to making the negotiation work. So number one, be civil. Number two builds on that. Be honest. We can't just try to make nice. As I said, the world has some really awful things in it, and the world has some very cruel people in it. I have to say, I feel sorry for all of you. I graduated high school in the 90s, and things were very different then. What we found challenging now seems trivial in comparison. The world is a very difficult place. It is much harder than it was 20 years ago. I think that, though, gives you opportunities. If you are interested in international affairs and willing to take on the challenge of being truly involved in international relations, you have a chance to do some amazing things to change the world in a good way. Change is not inherently a positive thing. And remember that to change the world in a good way means first knowing and understanding the world. So my advice to you in terms of being able to be honest about the world is get to know it first. You can't be honest unless you truly understand the full depth and complexity of the world in which you are operating. We often quote the Chinese strategist Sun Tzu, who said in order to win a war, you need to know yourself, know your enemy or your opponent, and know your terrain. Those three aspects of knowing yourself, knowing your opponent, and knowing your terrain are often repeated in all kinds of contexts as the basis of strategy. And in order to know yourself, you have to be honest about yourself, your weaknesses, your strengths, your abilities. You have to know your enemy or your opponent, and you have to know their strengths, their weaknesses, their abilities. And you have to know the terrain, and you have to understand what that actually means. What is dangerous? What is difficult? Today, the terrain in which international affairs takes place is totally different than when I was young. There was no Twitter. There was no Facebook. There was no social media. If you tweeted something today, 20 years ago, today that might be used against you. And that is not something that we had to deal with in quite the same way. And so we have to understand that the terrain has changed. World affairs have changed. And in order to be able to operate within world affairs, we have to get to know the world. That means get out, see the world, travel as much as you can. Once you are out in university and beyond, try and travel, study abroad, do as much as you can to experience other cultures, other people. Get out of the comfort zone. That is really important because once you start to get to know a place, you can truly understand it well enough to be honest about it. I have worked for much of my career in the Gulf of Guinea in West and Central Africa, and the largest country of the region is Nigeria. And I have been very, very fond of Nigerians for many years. I love working with Nigerians. However, Nigeria itself as a country is a very challenging place. The former British Prime Minister, David Cameron, referred to it as being fantastically corrupt and one of the most corrupt countries in the world. And in response, the president at the time, well, I guess he's still the president now, President Buhari, said, I don't want him to apologize. I just wish it wasn't true. And so this degree of honesty between those two leaders has opened up an ability to be a bit more discursive about the challenges within Nigeria. But I found myself in a very awkward position a few years back. I was asked by the Nigerian government, their Navy and their Maritime Administration specifically, to come and speak at a major event with 1,500 people present about what they needed to do to address the problems of piracy among civil society groups in the region. And I was given that prompt and I wasn't going to shy away from it. And so I told them I would be honest, but it was not going to be easy to hear. And what I said was, look, I understand what it is like to be criticized. I'm American. We get criticized all the time. And we have to take it. We're a big country. We're rich. We're powerful. We can take it. You need to be able to hear what I'm saying is not trying to criticize or denigrate you. It is to try to help. And what I said was the rest of the region does not see it having a piracy problem. It sees it as having a Nigeria problem. And that expression, that statement that, wow, you are the problem that the rest of the region is dealing with, you can't try to pass the buck, was actually heard to the point that the then Director General of their Maritime Administration actually put that quote into a book about what was pivotal in changing some of the dynamics of maritime security in West and Central Africa during his time in that administration. And so being honest requires building up the credibility to say those difficult truths, to be honest and not try to make people feel bad about themselves, but to be honest in a way that allows them to change and get better. Just as the way you would with a friend. You don't want to be the person that allows a friend to have their collar up or have something in their teeth or something that would embarrass them. You want to, yes, be honest and make that awkward moment, but so that they can actually correct it and have things be more comfortable and better for them. And so being honest with ourselves is important. Being honest with each other is critical. And to do that, we have to understand the terrain in which we're operating. So be honest is number 2. And number 3, be courageous. The world is difficult, as I've said, and we have all kinds of issues that can make us feel very unsettled, very uncertain, and very uncomfortable. We have to be willing to be uncomfortable. If you are going to work in international affairs, you have to be willing to not only talk about, but look at honestly and address some of the most challenging and painful issues in the world. We have a real challenge in the United States at the moment dealing with the history of slavery. That is a conversation we need to be willing to have, and we need to take it on head on. We also need to recognize that when we are dealing with other countries around the world, they're more than happy to talk about not only the history of slavery, but the current reality of it, because slavery is not just a thing of the past. In your lifetimes, in all of our lifetimes, slavery has actually been legal in some places. There is a country I have worked with, more than 20% of the population lives in slavery today. There are open slave markets in different parts of the world. And that reality is something that we have to be willing to confront and face, as difficult and painful as it is. There are all kinds of really challenging issues around the world. And only by having the courage to take them on can we actually start to genuinely change the world and make it a better place. I want to re-emphasize those 3 points: be civil, be honest, and be courageous. But I also want to say how important what you're doing is to help that process along. Simulated events model United Nations. We call them sometimes war games, sometimes tabletop exercises, are critical for international affairs to happen. As I said before, we have to improve diplomatic acumen. We need to get better as diplomats and negotiators in world affairs. In order to do that, we need to practice. So if some of you have played on a sports team, you may be familiar with the concept of a scrimmage, where you divide yourselves up and you play a game or a match against each other. It's a safe place to learn. It's a safe place to make mistakes. And that is what you have over the coming days, a safe place to learn and to make mistakes. I use this type of model in my work all the time. I work currently for the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, and we do 2 different types of sort of simulations of this sort. One is very familiar to people who will end up going to law school. We use mock trials or simulated trials to practice going through a trial so that all the lawyers, all the judges are familiar with how not only the procedures work, but the substance and how to ask the right questions to address an issue. When you're dealing with a piracy trial, for example, you have different issues than if you were dealing with somebody who stole a car in a city. Very, very different sets of questions. And getting to the comfort zone of knowing what to ask and knowing how to operate, the only way you get there is by doing it, by going through it. And it's much better to do it in a simulated environment where you can make the mistakes and learn than when it really counts and when somebody's life is at stake. So simulated trials are one aspect. But the other thing I do, and this is very similar to what you'll be experiencing in the coming days, is what's called a tabletop exercise. And we go through a scenario, either within a country, in different agencies within the country, or we do it with different countries of a region, and we practice how we do different things. So we practice how we would respond to a drug case, how we would respond to a piracy case, how we would respond to a terrorist attack, how we would respond to all sorts of different types of activities. And that practicing allows us not only to get better at understanding what the rules are, what the laws are, also knowing how to improve our skills to identify issues and respond to issues. And ultimately, it makes us better prepared as a team to deal with the specific issues that we're likely to face. Last January 2020, so before the pandemic, I was in Southeast Asia, and we'd already started wearing masks because this novel coronavirus was something that was being talked about in the news. But I found myself in the middle of a 13 agency tabletop exercise in this country, and I was leading it for 3 days. And one of the 8 scenarios that we did over those 3 days involved a search and rescue case dealing with a criminal matter and concern about the possibility that a couple of the sailors involved had some virus that was highly contractable. And we went through how do you save the lives, how do you deal with the criminal aspect, and how do you make sure nobody gets sick in the process. And at the time, it seemed a little bit far-fetched. It was a little bit too abstract and unlikely to really occur. But 2 months later, at the height of the pandemic, we were all stuck in lockdown, and I got a message from the head of the search and rescue agency of that country who said, if we had not done that trial, that simulated event, they would not have been prepared for what they just confronted. They confronted almost exactly that same case, a search and rescue involving criminals and the concern about being infected with COVID patients. And they were able to save the lives, arrest the criminals, and make sure nobody got sick. And he said if it wasn't for that event, they wouldn't have been ready for it. And so what you are getting to do over the coming days is to get to learn, to get to know the rules better, to get to improve your skills, and ultimately to get to be prepared for a world in which these sorts of negotiations are going to be more and more necessary. And so take this on as an opportunity to learn, to grow, but also to enjoy. Find the humanity in each other, find that common sense of purpose and drive, enjoy this experience and make the most of it. And I hope that what I've shared with you today has been somewhat encouraging, but be civil, be honest, be courageous, and have fun. Enjoy this and make the very most of it. Congratulations, and I hope this goes incredibly well for you, and all my best. We need all of you as much as possible to become the best diplomats, the best negotiators, and the best human beings you possibly can be. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rowley. We are all so appreciative of you taking the time to be a part of our conference this year. The International Relations Club at William & Mary, of which WMHSMUN is a part, focuses not only on simulated problem solving, but also on taking action to improve the world around us. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce Andrew Tanner, the Service Chair of the International Relations Club at William & Mary.
Hello and welcome to WMHSMUN 35. My name is Andrew Tanner, and I am the Service Chair for the International Relations Club. Each year, the International Relations Club at William & Mary supports different international non-governmental organizations, advocacy groups, or philanthropies. We focus not only on monetary contributions itself, but also on raising awareness and highlighting often overlooked international social problems. For the 2021-2022 year, we are supporting Tbilisi Pride, an LGBTQ+ rights advocacy organization in the small country of Georgia. You may recall Georgia for its most prominent feature in Western media, the 2008 Russian invasion, occupation, and annexation of significant parts of the country. To this day, Georgia still suffers from the impact of the illegal Russian invasion and is further harmed by Russian disinformation campaigns targeting human rights in the country. Thus, despite the modernization and liberalization of the country in the past 20 years, LGBTQ+ rights are constantly under attack. In their own words, the stated goal of Tbilisi Pride is, quote, a civic movement which opposes homo and transphobia and fights to overcome it through exercising the constitutional right of assembly and manifestation. The goal of the movement is to contribute to forming the environment where LGBT people are accepted, protected, free, and equal with the other citizens of Georgia. You can find more information on their website at tbilisipride.ge. Monetary contributions help Tbilisi Pride with organizing the annual Pride Week in Tbilisi and policy advocacy within Georgia. In normal years, the club is able to raise significant funding from in-person merchandise sales during WMHSMUN. Lacking this option this year, we are instead focusing on voluntary contributions through GoFundMe. The link for the GoFundMe is provided on the WMHSMUN website and has been further emailed to all sponsors. In addition to GoFundMe, you can make donations through our Venmo at WMIRC. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you enjoy the conference.
Thank you, Andrew. This weekend, members of the club's service team will be going to each committee if you would like to learn more about and/or donate to Tbilisi Pride. With that, I would like to thank you all for attending our opening ceremonies. We hope you're excited for our first committee session beginning today at 5:45 p.m. Eastern Time. We are so excited for this weekend and are beyond thrilled for you all to join us virtually. And thus, I am proud to declare the 35th session of the William & Mary High School Model United Nations Conference open.
Come on, dance with me. I'm levitating.